After that song, thank you, Holly. I really appreciate that. And there's a lot of work to do for Dr. King's dream. And if you see on the table out there, there are several others preceding him. My parents, my father was a school board chairman of our three-room little schoolhouse in Mississippi. And the most important thing was education and getting a job and working. Today's the Daily Word speaks highly of opportunities. Opportunities come in all shapes, sizes, dimension, countries, effort, energies that we put into an opportunity to grow. And that was the basis of the civil rights movement with Dr. King and all the other millions, and even preceding him, back from the beginning of the Civil War, preceding that, the Revolutionary War. There was a black man, Cyrus Tuck, I believe his name was, that was the first soldier to fall in the Revolutionary War. So we've been on this journey for a very long time, for centuries. And I'm so grateful for those who joined in the beginning to help bring about a oneness that Holly spoke of. We're working, and we're still on that journey. And as Dr. King said, he saw over the mountaintop. The mountaintop would be, and would have been, and I'm still looking over that mountaintop. And I'm sure there are many of you that are looking over the mountaintop. The mountaintop allowed me to be a part of Dr. King's journey and the Black movement and their movement to enhance America into a higher vibration of oneness, of understanding, of knowingness that we are one. I remember as a little girl on the farm, we were planting the garden, and I'm the seventh child, a mama's baby and a papa's girl. And I was on my papa's heels, and we were planting, and I said, Papa, so I'm squatting down. Not sure I can get down there and get up again. But I said, how does God know this is going to come up? He said, He knows everything. So that helped me in doing the marches and doing what I do in life. In Chicago, when the marches were, there were those of us who marched with Dr. King downtown, those of them. My mother had lost 3 children in a fire, she and my dad, and my father had lost, with his previous wife, a child and wife in death. So when my mother said, I don't ever want to see your face on that TV, a bullet, a stray bullet, does not have a name on it. So when I explained that, there were truckloads of buses. One of my nieces reminded me a couple of days ago. She said, remember, Auntie, we were at your house and they would pick us up and we would go, they took us to the suburbs to do the marches. And the marches in the suburb were to introduce and working to get Black products on the market. See, opportunities are great, but you got to work them. Just like everything else, nothing happens by itself. That's each of our journey here, is to create and make things happen in life with prayer, meditation, and listening to the higher power of each of us. And with knowing that God knew everything, I went out a few days later and they were coming up. So I ran someplace and found Papa, and he said, yeah, I know. But I was really excited. I wanted Papa to come see. But he didn't come see because he already knew. So I know that. I know that. I understand that. And I'm still learning from that message. So when Dr. King said his main opportunities for Black Americans were to get a good education. And education was something that we were always aware of. And my papa being the school board chairman, this was in Mississippi. Now, you've heard many unpleasant things about the South. I've had greater experiences there than I have here. In Minnesota, one of the places I found 2 different times were notations from the Ku Klux Klan in Minnesota. Okay? Never found that in the South anyplace. So you just never know where the unpleasantness is going to greet you. And you have to always have on your armor of the Holy Spirit and God Almighty protecting you. You see, you may see a picture here of him. Yes, as a child. That's a very rare photo. Now you may want to know, why did I leave this picture in color? Because as I was doing this research on putting this together with the help, first I want to say so much help to Barb, Ellie, and Peggy. These are some awesome helping souls. Do you all want to know that? You chicks rock. And thank you. I was at a presentation on Black history just this past week. The gentleman that was directed, poor child, was pitiful. Anybody remember the Beverly Hillbillies? And remember Granny saying, pitiful, pitiful? That's where I got up. With the help of the good Lord and Martin here. The child was pitiful, pitiful, pitiful. So I sat there almost an hour, closer to like 53 or 56 minutes, so I just had to take over and say, this is not the way it was. Because he made it seem like every Black person in the South lived in squalor. So when I came across this house and I set it in, and they put all the pictures in black because that depicts so much of the era in which the civil rights kind of focus and blossom in, and we're still blooming, and we're reseeding and replanting, all of us, each of us, for growth. And I wanted it to be seen because many, like this speaker was speaking, that we all lived in poverty. I had to explain them. I grew up on my grandfather's land, and I still have a few acres of my own. And not only that, my nieces, nephews, and great-nieces and great-nephews are living on that land. I wanted, and one other thing, blockbusting. Anybody know what the term blockbusting means? Never heard it before? Right. And I had a good girlfriend. She was a sweet lady, beautiful, wonderful woman. I get a call from her one day, said, we have a new job. I says, oh, what? And she told me. I went silent, and she said, I'm kind of a chat box. Nobody noticed that. And so she said, are you still there? I said, yeah. She said, well, I says, I'm sorry, Janie, I can't do that. And she said, are you crazy, woman? I said, I can't call someone and say the N-word in the 60s, before anybody wanted to outlaw it 100% like it is now. Said, and by the way, back in the day, I haven't seen that in a dictionary. The N-word said that it was any ignorant individual, had nothing to do with color. Just so y'all know, you heard it here if you didn't hear it before. So I couldn't call someone in their home and say, the blanks are coming. When I explained that to Janie, Janie was blonde, was redhead, freckles, just an absolutely beautiful person, green eyes. And she said, we want to get better homes. And we can't get in those neighborhoods unless we get the people to move out. Aren't you willing to get a better home? I says, well, the home that I have now, this is in Chicago, it's an apartment, it's a very nice area. I said, I can't do that. There have to be another way. And when I moved to Minnesota, I found out that this had occurred on the north side. They had left many beautiful homes, absolutely artistic craftsmanship in those homes. And many of them are still that way. They're not all destroyed, as some of them have. But you find that any place and everywhere throughout America, not just in Minnesota, not just in the South. So the opportunities is education and understanding, knowing what is needed and what need to be going on, what need to happen, what need to occur to make things better for everyone. Each and every one of us want to be a higher vibration of the spiritual of the God Almighty. And with that is our homes. We need our homes to be our shelter. Each of us are the queen and king of our homes. That's important. Education gets jobs, and I got 2 minutes. Education get jobs, and jobs afford us to have the home to live a better life. We as Black people simply want to live the way we know. And if you go back to ancient history and dig up some of the old books and some of the old places in Africa where there was exquisite temples, I mean, just absolutely fantastic, that have gone through whatever chaos that caused them to be lost. And there are those things that we need to know, that we did know how to live and how to do for ourselves as a culture of people. And the marches, this one was a homemade when I was here in Minnesota. 1 minute. I came home one night from work, it's about 10 o'clock, and on my radio, when I came, I left the radio on. It's a good thing to do when you're out, radio or TV, because somebody comes in, want to go in uninvited, they don't know about the noise. And TCF was advertising to beat the band that they were not going to be closed on Dr. King's holiday appointed. So I called friends, woke some up, and said we would be there after this 7 o'clock breakfast. And this is one of my homemade signs. I think the other picture, this was a long time ago in the 80s. So therefore, I've carried this with me, and I've kept it because I want my granddaughter and other great-grandchildren to know that I didn't step away from my responsibility. One of the urgent things that Dr. King's question is, what are you doing for others? And I thought this would be a good demo. Only one person knows about this. I'm saying to Regina Reed, what are you doing, dear, for others? Now, a request from each of you, when you are in front of a mirror, I have one in your purse, or in the restroom, just take it and look and ask yourself, what am I doing for others? I think I'm done. Thank you.
was lucky when I was a little girl. In my town, we had colored town. And we had colored people who lived in that colored town. And I could not wait to meet me a friend who was orange or green or purple and go to their colored, rainbow-colored houses. It is beautiful. But it always hasn't been so pretty. On December 23rd, just this last year, so about a month ago, you may have caught an obituary for Johnny Coleman. Is anyone familiar with the name? All right. This is a story most have not heard. As much as we know that our philosophy is one of oneness, our history is not without its skeletons. For Johnny Coleman was a tall, beautiful black woman. And when she was a young woman, she was very ill. So she, along with many others, sought out the new thought, way of healing, found herself at Unity Village. And she was healed. And she always wanted to repay that in service. So she ended up being our first black student at Unity Village. Unity Association of Churches, it was called at the time. Sadly to say, she was not allowed to stay on the campus. She was not given the same schedules and the same opportunities. So we weren't all very evolved at the time. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Johnny Coleman went on to start a church in Chicago, a Unity Church. And then she continued to work at the village. In fact, she was our first black president. So Johnny Coleman, however, even though after the civil rights was enacted, was facing an awful lot of discrimination against her color. So she hung around for about maybe 20, 25 years, I think it was. She had established 3 churches, 3 Unity churches in Chicago, an institute and an academy. And she finally couldn't stomach it anymore. It was time for her to listen to the calling of Spirit, because we still would not allow her people, when they came down from Chicago, to stay in the motel there, Unity. So it's a little bit sad that she so believed in our philosophy, and we believe in our philosophy, but for her to witness that we were not able to live it. So everything takes time, I suppose, but she went on to establish the biggest African-American New Thought church in the world, 20,000 followers. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if they were us? About 10 years ago, before my father died, I overheard him telling a story to a friend. He said, I must have raised my children right. My second grader, well, it was 4th grade. My 4th grade daughter came home from school and I asked her how she liked her teacher. She said all these wonderful things. And when I went to open house a few weeks later, I was shocked to see that she was black. It had never occurred to me to mention the color of her skin. I knew that I loved my teacher. You see, in kindergarten, we learn how to differentiate an apple from an orange. But when we get like in about 3rd or 4th grade, we're taught to discriminate the difference between the variety of apples. You see, that's the finer quality. And this is exactly what Martin Luther King was referring to when he said, I have a dream that someday a man will not be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. This is the dream. This is who we are at our core. But this oneness idea that we live, we have to remember, we're taught this, we know this, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So this oneness is not just in our head. This oneness has to come into the human arena, into our societies, into our communities, into our heart. To wake up, we need to know what that one is that we're one with. And this is our mission. If you read the mission of Unity the Valley, if you read the goal and the vision and the mission of Unity Worldwide, it is to awaken to oneness. And so thank you for asking us to do that and be part of that process and to have a little bit of insight into how far back that goes. Because the more truth we have, the more we learn, the more powerful we are, the more understanding we can be. I too have some homework for you, so don't forget the mirror. Okay, if you want to know more about Johnny Coleman, please Google her. Take a look at her beautiful face. And if you want the nitty-gritty, it's out there. You can find it. Listen to some of Martin Luther King's speeches on YouTube. They're available amazingly, and they're inspiring. He was one of the greatest orators we had. Interesting about his speech, you may not know this either. He had a speechwriter, and he had his speech all ready, and he was talking from his speech, and being a Baptist minister, he could kind of feel the crowd. It was going down just a little bit. So he says, somebody yelled out, one of his friends in the background says, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." Well, his speechwriters thought it was a little bit too trite to talk about, oh, I dreamed this, I had this dream. Well, he put that paper aside, and the power starts to come out. Because it's where our dreams really are that we bring the power. Amen. He has some wonderful, not just public speeches, but also you can get a little bit of insight into his Christianity, his religious ideas, if you listen to some of his preachings. And I want to interject this here because I hear people argue and say, look at the man's personal life. He had some issues. Well, let's get real, right? We all have human failures. I mean, he's in good company. You read the Bible, he looks like a saint. And not to mention a few presidents of the country I can name. In fact, never mind. So just because of our weaknesses, we must remember that does not negate the good that we bring to the world, just as the evil madmen of our history are not negated by the love that they can give to their family and friends. So we need to keep that big picture in mind. So if you don't have a friend of color, take an inventory of your friends. If you do not have a friend who looks different from you, it's high time you have one. I spent 1 year as a teacher in almost all black high school in rural Virginia. And I can tell you, I learned a lot more about life than I taught math or science that year. And it's a rich, rich experience. So maybe walk out of your way and have a pleasant encounter with someone who is different from you. And then consider for yourself your own dream for the world. Martin, when he was a child, wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor. But he saw the value in leading a principled life and the importance of his Christian upbringing. But you can see where those original dreams have come forth in what he did in the world. He brought justice. He wasn't a lawyer, didn't manifest the way he might have thought, but he brought justice. He brought healing. So those dreams, even though we have not perhaps manifested them in the way we originally pictured, they never die. So consider your own dreams for the world, and let Spirit work through you to march them forth. The highest dream within me sees, honors, and affirms the highest dream within you. Namaste.